Okay, so in 5.1, we're going to look at how do we write the equation of a line if we just have 2 points. So what if we don't have a graph? What if we have points? What if we have tables? How do we write the equation? So that's what we're going to look at today. Before we talk about writing the equation, we have to talk about this new form of a linear equation, this point-slope form. Point-slope form is another formula for the equation of a line which is easily written when you know the slope and a point on the line. So as long as we have the slope and we have a point, we can write the equation of a line. This is the point-slope form of a linear function. This y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where this y1 is going to be the y coordinate of the given point. So we're going to plug in the y coordinate of a point that we know in for y1. Then the m, just like in slope-intercept, the m is going to be our slope. Kind of have to squish that in there. And then that x1 is going to be the x-coordinate of given point. So when we have this y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, this y1 is where we're going to plug in the y coordinate of the point that we know. We can plug in our slope for m, and then we can plug in the x coordinate of the point we know right here where it says x1. Okay? So that's what we're going to practice first here. I have given you a point, and I've given you the slope, and we're just going to practice writing the equation in the point-slope form. So given this point, 8, 3, this will be our x1 and our y1. And then our slope is 1 over 4. And we're going to plug this information into y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. We're going to plug this into the point-slope form. You can do that. You don't have to rewrite it, Riley. But. All right, so we've got y minus. Well, what's the y value of the point we're given? 3, so that's what we're going to plug in. Y minus 3 equals our m, which is 1 over 4, times x minus, what's our x1? It's 8. Boom. That's the point slope form, yep. Okay? Now the funny thing is that it is easy because I've already given you equations in this point slope form when we were graphing. And then remember, we just had to distribute and simplify to get it in y equals mx plus b. So this is the only new thing. The only new thing is, can you plug this into this point slope form? And then if you can do that, everything else is review. Everything else we've already done, okay? So let's practice again. We've got negative 6, 12 is our point. So again, that's our x1 and our y1. And then m, our slope, is negative 2. So we're going to plug that in, and you don't have to keep rewriting the formula, but it might help you memorize it if you do. So you've got y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So now let's plug stuff in. This is going to be y minus 12 equals m is negative 2 times x minus negative 6. Now, just like with our slope formula, what happens when we minus a negative? It's a plus. So the simplified version of this point slope really would be y minus 12 equals negative 2 times x plus 6. Because when we minus a negative, really we're adding. So you will never, on the EOC, on my test, on the formatives, whatever, you will never see a minus a negative. Instead, we would just simplify it to that plus. Okay? Let's try that one more time. Number 3, our point this time is -2, -11, and the slope is 5/2. So that means this point, this is my x1 and my y1. Plugging that into y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So that means I'm plugging this in. Y minus -11 equals 5/2 times x minus -2. Now that is so sloppy with all those negatives. So what happens? How does that simplify? To a plus, right? When we minus a negative, that becomes a plus. So the point slope form of this equation is y plus 11 equals 5/2 times x plus 2. Because when we minus a negative, it becomes a plus. That's the actual point slope form. It would be simplified with those plus signs. Everybody cool? All right, then let's move on and talk about how can we use this now to write an equation from 2 points. This is what I mean that this step, this is the only new step. Step number 1, finding the slope, that's a review. And then step number 3, when we're going to simplify back into slope-intercept, that's a review. So this really is the only new thing that we're doing here in 4.5. All right? So here's our example. We're going to write an equation of a line that passes through the points -2, 4 and 4, 22. So to write the equation of a line, the first thing we have to do is know that slope. We have to know that rate of change. So if this is x1, y1, and this can be my x2, y2, in 4.1, we did the slope formula, right? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2 is 22 minus y1, which is 4, divided by x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is -2. But again, when we minus a negative, really what we're doing is adding. So then when we do that math, 22 minus 4 is 18. 4 plus 2 is 6, which means our slope is 3. Now, I have my slope, which is 3. And I can use either point, but I normally like to use the one that I label x1 and y1 just because that's what the formula uses. But again, it doesn't matter. You can use either point. And now we're going to do exactly what we did in these top 3. We're going to take our slope, which is 3, and our points, and we're going to plug it into point slope form. So we've got y minus y1, which is 4, is equal to m, my slope, which is 3, times x minus a -2. But since I'm about to minus a -2, really I'm going to add the 2. Okay, that's the only new step. Now what we're going to do, step number 3, we did this in, I don't know, 4.2, I think. Yeah, 4.2. All we're going to do now is simplify this to y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I'd want to do is distribute. So we distribute this 3. So that we have y minus 4 equals 3x plus 6. Then all I have to do to get y by itself is add this 4. Which means y equals 3x plus, there you go. You've just written the equation of a line when all you know is 2 points. All right, So we've got 4 more to practice. I'm going to do 3 more with you, and then I'm going to let you try that last one by yourself or with your partner. Okay? So you're writing the equation of a line that passes through the given set of points. Number 4, we've got the points 2, 3, and 0, 5. So I can say this is my x1 and y1, and this is my x2 and my y2. The first thing I have to do is find that slope. So I'm going to use my slope formula, which is y2 minus y1. So that's 5 minus 3 divided by x2 minus x1. So 0 minus 2. So then 5 minus 3 is 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. And when I simplify that, 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. Good job, Marley. All right. So now here's the new part. Now I know the slope and I have a point. So I'm going to take my slope of negative 1 and I'm going to take one of my points and I'm going to plug it into that point slope form so that I can write the linear function. So that would be y minus the y1, which is 3, equals negative 1 times x minus x1, which is 2. Okay, easy peasy. That's the new part. Now we just simplify this into y equals mx plus b. So I distribute that negative 1. So I get y minus 3 equals negative 1x. And then the negative 1 times the negative 2 is going to be plus 2. So then all I have to do to get this y by itself is get rid of this minus 3. So I'm going to add the 3 to both sides, which means the equation in slope-intercept form is y equals negative x plus 5. And if you want to keep the 1 in front of the x, you can, but you don't need it. Find the slope, plug it into that new point slope form, and then simplify. That's it. Okay? 2 more together. And again, if you're like working ahead of me, that's better than being like behind me, because then at least you're kind of like, do I know what's next? Do I know what's next? Because if you know the order, that's going to be good. And then you can just be checking your math. All right, so this time our points are negative 12, 14, and 6, negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is my x1 and y1, and this is going to be my x and y2s. I got to find that slope first. Know that that's step number 1 of this process. So to find m, the slope, I'm going to do y2, which is negative 1, minus y1, which is 14, divided by x2, which is 6, minus x1, which is a negative 12. But when I minus a negative 12, really I am adding. So when I do negative 1 minus 14, negative 15, and then 6 plus 12, very good. Now I need to simplify that. And you can always use the calculator to do that. You can do negative 15 divided by 18. And it's going to give you a decimal. We don't want that. So you're going to go, very good, negative 5 over 6. All right. Very good. So now here comes the new part. Because now I know the slope and I can use one of my points and I'm going to plug it into that new point slope form that we've been talking about. So that means it's going to be y minus y1, which is 14, equals m, which is the negative 5 over 6, times x minus, but since that's a negative 12, I'm not going to minus a negative 12. I'm going to make it a what? Plus 12. So that's x plus 12 because it was minus a negative. All right, and then now we're just going to simplify and get that in y equals mx plus b. So we're going to go ahead and distribute. So I'm just going to bring down the y minus 14. When I distribute first, I get negative 5 over 6x. And then that's going to be minus 10. Then all I have to do to get that 14 by itself, or the y by itself, is add that 14. So the equation for this line is y equals negative 5 over 6x plus 4. My slope is a negative 5 over 6. The y-intercept would be 4. You could graph this now. All the things. All right, one more with me. And then the next one, it's you and your partner. So these next two, I've given you a table. But what you have to understand is that a table is just points. This table has 4 different points, but I only need how many? How many do I need for this process to write the equation of a line? I only need 2. I only need 2 points to write the equation of a line. So the table just gives you options. You can use whatever 2 points you want. You guys just want to use the first 2 points? Okay, great. So this first point is 5, negative 1. And then the second point is 10, negative 16. So now that I've pulled those points out, it's literally just like 4 and 5, where I gave you the 2 points. So the first thing we got to do is find that slope. So I'm going to label these my x and y1, label these my x and y2. Use that slope formula. So this is going to be negative 16 minus negative 1, but minus a negative is just like adding. And then divided by x2 minus x1, so 10 minus 5. Negative 16 plus 1 is negative 15. 10 minus 5 is 5. And when I simplify that, negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. Yep, negative 3 over 1, but that's just negative 3. Okay, now the new part. I have the slope. I'm going to use this as my point, and I'm going to plug that into that point slope form so that I can then simplify it to y equals mx plus b. So point slope is y minus y1, so it's going to be y minus negative 1, but I'm not going to do negative 1 or make it a plus. So I've got y plus 1 equals m, which is negative 3, times x minus the x1, and the x1 is 5. Now we solve for x. So we're going to go ahead and distribute that negative 3. I'm going to bring down y plus 1 is equal to negative 3x plus the 15. So then all I have to do to get y by itself is subtract that 1, which means the equation for this line is y equals negative 3x plus 14. Okay, number 7. Once again, I've given you a table. You only need 2 of those 4 points. Looking at some of those y values, maybe you don't pick the ones with decimals. So maybe you use 0, negative 8, and 4, negative 7. You don't have to use back-to-back numbers, just 2 from the table. All right, so now I'm going to give you 3 minutes. 3 minutes, you and your partner. See if you can write that equation using that point slope form and then rearranging to y equals mx plus b. Remember, find the slope first. 5 4 minus 0. So then negative 7 plus 8 is 1. 4 minus 0 is 4. So your slope is 1 over 4. So then I plugged it into my point slope form, and I used this point 0, 8. And I did y minus negative 8, but minus a negative becomes a plus. So I have y plus 8 is equal to the 1/4, and then I just put the x minus 0 in there. Then I distribute. 0 times anything is just 0. So then when I had to get y by itself, since this was y plus 8, I do the opposite of that and subtract 8 to get my equation y equals 1/4 x minus 8. All right, so